Hey, everybody, our Teespring campaign is still going.
Yeah, it is. It is rapidly wrapping up. However, there's still time for you to show your support for either of your preferred candidates or platforms.
Either
You can
traps
go-
snakes.
Yep, trap snakes or turtle pillars. So, which kind of person are you? And you need to show your support if you want them to get printed and actually have the shirt in question. If you're a snake man, you're all set.
Yep.
If you're a turtle man, you got a little bit of work to do.
Yeah.
We're not saying this out of greed. We're just saying if you want the shirt, that's
Yes.
how Teespring works. If you go to Duckfeed.tv/shirts, you can find the page for those and cast your vote.
Yes. So as of the time this episode comes out, it's coming out on the 29th of March. You have until April the 5th to order this. So you have about a week left.
Yep. So get in there, vote early, vote often, and may the future be ready to strike.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a
Beastly favorite.
Beastly favorite, bloody favorite.
Frenzied favorite.
It is a fine favorite.
Yes.
But it's up to you to decide if it's a foul favorite.
We'll find out over the course of this season.
Yes. I know.
Ominous.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're here this week to give you our first impressions of Bloodborne, which just came out here this past Tuesday.
Yeah, and we've been both been playing it. This is not our kind of first episode guide episode that we have that covers the tutorial and everything. Consider this kind of an amuse-bouche. Just kind of dipping our toes in it because we are still dipping our toes in the blood as well.
Yeah. How many hours have you played, Gary?
I think I am at about 13 or 14, give or take. I haven't been able to play it as much as I want because I started a new job.
Yeah.
So, and that makes slaves of us all. That job's like, it's the first job of my life I've ever liked. And I still would, it's still getting in the way of being at home and playing Bloodborne.
That's crazy because I've played it for 32.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot. Yeah. I might be underestimating how much I played it, but you're a bit further along than I am as well. But yeah, so yeah, just kind of first impressions. We don't want to get too much into stuff we're going to cover later. We also need to say, so ordinarily we just do this on 1 week, and then next week we do the tutorial area and really get things started. And I will take the heat on this if this makes anybody mad. We're going to push that off another week. And the reason being, so we do those tutorial episodes, and I'm really proud of those. Like, I think those are good. If somebody's getting into Dark Souls, like the first episodes of our first episode of our Dark Souls season, I think is a good place to start. Same thing with Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2. And they're really comprehensive. And this kind of segues into our first impressions thing, but Bloodborne is so different and has so much going on that I don't want to spread a bunch of misinformation.
Yeah.
And say like, hey, this mechanic is new and it works like this as a basic, and then have that be totally false.
Right.
So next week so in 2 weeks from now, we are doing our tutorial solo generalities episode. And then in 2 weeks after that, we're covering Central Yharnam, the first area.
Right. So like Gary said, we want to wait for the blood to kind of settle.
Yes.
Let everything
get it cool down, get thick.
Yep, coagulate. Just because we don't
let it get thick, parentheses 3. So.
Yes, but we don't want to fire the hand cannon indoors, as it were. So
Yes.
we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do in the next week. But that is the case, and I will echo Gary's kind of sentiment here. I expected to be further along than I was right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I had beaten Dark Souls 2 by this part, and this is all kind of parts of. I guess we're just kind of segueing into it naturally. But like one of the first impression things is this game is hard.
Oh my God, is it hard, Gary?
It is hard and different in a way. Those two things support each other. Like one, it is harder than any of the games in the series so far, and I don't think that's just newness. Like when I went from Dark to Demons, cakewalk. When I went from Demons to Dark Souls 2, cakewalk in comparison to this, because it is both harder and very different. So your knowledge as kind of a Souls veteran does work against you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why, again, like I said, I had beaten Dark Souls 2 by this point and was like ready to, and it also, the community had gotten further in understanding it. I've been trying to stay wiki free as much as possible, but the few times I've succumbed to temptation and like, I got to have somebody explain what this is to me. A lot of times I'm coming up with blanks. All the walkthroughs online are about halfway through the game. They stop at what I assume is around the halfway point, but again, I don't know because I don't know anything.
Yeah. And the early going, the first area, that central Yharnam, I haven't felt like this since I spent like 12 hours in the Undead Burg. My first go through. It's
a real wall. So I'm spending a lot of time, it's all valuable. I'm learning as I'm going, but I'm just not getting further into it. And the systems don't have corollaries the way they do in the other Souls games. Like I can't say like, oh, this is what the covenants are. Like that's a thing that we could do, or like this is how this works. Like they're new.
Right.
It is extremely different. So thus the punt, and thus that was the thing I took away from this when I first played it, because I had avoided all the preview coverage. I knew there were guns, and I knew a little bit about the setting, but I knew that you had to play more aggressively. I had no idea it would be quite this different.
And quite as withholding either, because something that happens is it's very deliberate in the way it reveals these things to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Things that will have, drastic implications on those first couple of hours, and the interpretation of them, you're not going to get, until things kind of play out.
Right. It is.
Decant.
It's the most obtuse of the games. Like I feel like even Dark Souls 1, which is famously, very obtuse, with like the bells and like there are two bells, go ring them. Like that gave me more of a sense of what I was doing and my place in the world. Like that game, for all we talk about how obscure it is, like you start off with the intro that lays everything out, and then you get told a prophecy, and you can say these things in the intro are going to be important, and I am the subject of a prophecy. And even though there's a lot of twists and turns to that, those more or less turn out to be true.
Right.
No such thing in Bloodborne, at least that I've found.
To the point that even now, 34 hours in, I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I have no clue. It takes that like Dark Souls 2, whereas Dark Souls 2 will use that, the whole like people were saying like you're not going to know why you're here, and that was part of a narrative conceit. Here, I'm not ready to call it anything other, like I'm not ready to cast shade on it or anything, but it isn't, I just don't know. No one's telling me that. It doesn't feel like, if it's intentional, the intentionality is to make me feel lost, and lost in a great way, in a lot of ways. Like it's really awesome. And every little piece of information I'm finding is really fascinating and cool.
Yeah.
But I just, so the first impression thing that I'm going to come up with is that, that kind of bewilderment and lack of direction. So this is a game that does not hold your hand, and in a series that is famous for not doing that, but in retrospect actually had 20 training wheels on it, and
training wheels he didn't even realize were there. In a lot of ways, at least until they were taken away.
Yeah.
And normally, if we're gonna bear this metaphor out, when they take away the training wheels and your dad lets go of the handlebars, you're supposed to just kind of keep going, and that is not the case here. Actually,
this is like you're plopped in a room with the pieces of a bike.
Yep.
And like that's it. And it's like you put this together and figure it out.
It's like an Odyssey of the Mind challenge.
Exactly. Yeah, it is so those little cards. It's the courtroom challenges, whatever those things are called.
I don't remember
those.
Yeah, I don't know.
You be the judge, you be the jury.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those things
like
are
a mock
those things
trial
are
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, where like you just have to do evidence, and like I remember a lot of them were like, but the client said he was allergic to tomatoes, but there was ketchup on the sandwich. Like that was
it's real life Phoenix Wright role play.
It is like there were books.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I ordered
the Fabledlands. I got mine too.
Yeah, I haven't. I just kind of flipped through them, but I'm like, this is legit. I'm gonna sit down and really do a number on that after I'm done bloodboarding and doing other pod homework and working and starting school.
Yeah, we'll get to it after all that.
Yeah, when I did. The
so to kind of like take this out to the combat, which was kind of my first impression, with the way that it treats that, I kind of tweeted about this, but caution is to Dark Souls as confidence is to Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Right. Like everything about this game is geared to make you act as aggressively as possible.
It's interesting too, because and this is one of the reasons why I'm withholding judgment on some of that, because that does end up being the case. Like as a generality, that's true. There are lots of situations that I found that I still benefited from handling in kind of Dark Souls classic, way of like, I need to be super cautious and just keep my distance and stuff. Because when you couple that aggression thing with the sense of consequence that is inherent in Souls, you do run into this tension that I really like, but also gets frustrating. Like if, that kind of, so there are a lot of little mechanical things to benefit that. Like enemies stagger incredibly easily.
Yeah.
They have the regain system, which we'll talk about at length during our tutorial episode, and limited healing items. And all three of those things are things to enforce aggression. One of the things that disencourages that is like that, there are enemies still that can one-shot you. And so what it means is that unlike any other Souls game, like a very simple mistake turns into a loading screen really quick.
A 35 or 45 second loading screen.
Yeah, which like that's another first impression thing. I hate harping on technical shit like that, but it's like right now it is my primary motivator not to die.
Yeah.
Is not to have to set through it again. Like it's, 45 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but you die all the time. And
let's put 45 seconds of silence in the middle of this show.
Every single time that you probably would die, like during a half hour, 45 minutes or so of Dark Souls, or Bloodborne rather, when you're just starting it, So we'll escape this episode like 10 minutes of content, because it has all those Souls things that are normal, right? Like you get to a boss, you're figuring him out, you're gonna die, or you're likely to die while you're learning. But you have this load screen, you have this boss run up between attempts. It's like the anti-Hotline Miami, like where you have the like it's iterative in a way that I've never been madder at a Souls game than this, and I think this is what's contributing to it. Is just this huge wait before being able to try again.
It's a drag.
It is a bit of a drag. Like I've always been good with that. I've been at peace with that in Souls games. Before. Here, because of that aggressive combat, the fact that I can't stay back, like that kind of iterative learning process, I feel like lends itself more to a reactive combat system than this, possibly. So it is like, it's awesome that they're trying new shit. It does, some of the old stuff that they carried along, I feel like conflicts with some of the newer systems. In a way that right now, just in the middle of it, is making me very angry. I'm not saying it is a bad or a good thing yet. I'm saying right now the emotion that I'm feeling is like extreme anger at it, and we'll see how that actually bears out. Like I will either get good scrub and be fine with it, or I will come to appreciate it as either like a kind of gleeful punishing mechanic, or as like a cooldown system, or to add that extra sense of satisfaction, or any of the things you could argue these things are there for. I may come around on that. Right now, it feels a little bit like one foot in the future and 1 foot in the past kind of thing. To me.
What I will say, somebody who traditionally has played Dark Souls without the shield, like somebody who broke beyond that, is probably going to have a better chance of being successful here.
That is, when I was talking about approaching situations cautiously, that is how I'm playing it now, more or less, because I have a weapon with a very long reach. And I'm keeping things at distance, and still approaching them, carefully, but just not being able to block. And and from time to time, I'm not entirely eschewing the intended play method. Like there are lots of enemies I take, I just get in and scrap with. But when something's new and I don't know what it's going to do, I'm very hesitant to get right up in there. Especially once you start running into, like initially the early game, like everything staggers in one hit. When you get into the middle game, things stop doing that. And if it's like, if I hit him, he doesn't stagger, I don't know what his windup is, and his windup leads to a one-shot kill attack. Like, that's just too much consequence for me to feel comfortable being that confident. So, like, you do have to be confident. You know, like, you're right about the confidence caution thing. But I haven't gotten to the point where I can feel that confident with it. And that could be on me. Like, this is sounding like I'm throwing shade. This is me processing, you know, my initial kind of feelings of it. And that's all this episode is. Like, these are not final judgments.
Yeah. My initial feeling. So I'm somebody who never really got out from behind a shield. Like, I, you know, kind of did runs where I kept the shield as an option, but tried to not get away from it. But that's just, you know, what ended up being successful for me. Kind of coming into this and being, you know, forced to learn how to swim, I've become very grateful and, you know, kind of boosted, you know, had my confidence boosted by the role that guns play in the combat. Like, you know, we had a little bit of a text back and forth, like, oh, I feel like a badass with these riposts, like, you know, getting into the visceral attacks. That window is much wider, but I otherwise wouldn't have even taken a risk at trying a parry and riposte. You can probably count, you know, if not on one hand or two, you know, both hands and both feet, how many times I did a parry and riposte in Dark Souls 2. But here, that has actually worked its way in, and I'm constantly looking for opportunities to try and open that up, because that can take a very difficult, you know, battle where anybody could kill you with any one attack, and turn those death blow opportunities on their side into a death blow opportunity for me by kind of opening this up.
And the thing is, though, when you're in that learning stage, like, not every enemy can be riposted this way, and not every attack can be.
Right.
You know, so, like, I agree with you, but it's one of those things where it's like 80% of the time I think it works. But that 1 out of 5 times, or 1 out of 10 times that doesn't, makes me gun shy about it. No pun intended.
Pun absolutely intended. Come on.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It was pretty good.
Pun appreciated. Pun. I'll take credit for it.
Okay.
I wasn't fishing, but I like what I caught. And so I do, like, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like because I do, you know, I've been using the guns and it is super satisfying and I like it. Specifically in the kind of mid game where I'm at now, I'm just running into more enemies that I'm kind of being punished for that. And it really is just that, like, I don't want to sit through a loading screen, lose all my stuff, and then do this run up again. Yeah. Like, so that's kind of, it's just weird. Like I said, it's just how I'm feeling about it right this second, you know?
Let's talk about the trick weapons a little bit, because I'm satisfied with how that varies up the tactics, you know, of how you approach any given situation. And I like that it brings more variety to any particular build, but strategically the lack of variety is kind of bumming me out, insofar as I think I have like maybe 4 or 5 weapons at my disposal, and in reality that is, you know, 8 to 10 different weapons depending on how you know, right, how they articulate. So I'm kind of really split on what that has done to the way this game plays, and kind of the larger implications of that system.
Yeah, me too. Like, it is, on one hand, like, the weapons are all really cool that I've played with. Like, they're all really neat. The idea of the trick weapons is super cool. And those are, and we'll talk about them at length in the tutorial episode, but they're weapons and they kind of have 2 forms. You switch them into kind of like 2 different modes. And I like that a lot. But there are just so fewer of them, and it kind of plays into a general un-RPGing of this game, in that, you know, build options aren't really a thing as far as I can tell. The stand-in for magic you don't get until pretty far into the game. And I haven't gotten it yet. This is just from reading about it. Unless I'm wrong. Like, have you?
No, I got a tweet from somebody who said, "Hey, there's magic in this." It was unsolicited too. Like, hey, there's magic in this. Gave it much later.
Like, they knew what we were gonna say.
Yeah. But you know, I haven't gotten to it yet, and I'm like pretty far in. Like, I think I'm rounding the bend, is, you know, in terms of what it's showing me. So if this is like an 11th hour reveal, it's kind of weird that they would put that system in and not let you use it on more of the real estate.
It's either an 11th hour reveal or it's an obscure thing that's hidden. Yeah, that we both missed. Regardless of which, like, magic, which was, you know, in the earlier Souls games, like, miracles played very different than sorceries, which played pretty different than pyromancies. All of those are off the board. Ranged weapons, you know, you can make a gun build, but it requires a lot of runes, which you don't get until a decent way through the game. Yeah. Or you can, you know, it depends. You can kind of speed run to that boss if you want to, but Yeah, so the lack of builds kind of plays in with that lack of weapons to where like the weapons do feel very different, but there's just so few of them. And the biggest thing that I'm missing from it, that I didn't realize I'd be missing about it, is that when you go and you like it, I'm still exploring and looking for every glowing item on the ground because that's souls, and that's why I want all the glowies. But so few of them are equipment now that the reward ends up being like, oh, this is a consumable that I have, like I'm just not going to use. You know, that just like, oh, this is a thing that powers up my guns. I don't use my guns very often. Or, oh, this is like a really minor soul item. So it kind of takes away some of that fun. Like being able to go and find like a good weapon or powerful weapon or just try out new weapons on a regular basis was a fun thing in previous Souls games to me. And then on the other hand, like each individual weapon handles, you know, as well. Like each weapon handles like the puzzling stone sword. Yeah. And I mean, there's a direct corollary to it in this game, but the weapons that have the like, this is this move set mixed with this move set. Kind of thing. They all do that in a way that's really satisfying.
They do that in a way that's really satisfying, and it kind of bums me out because a lot of the equipment is still stack gated, right? So depending on the decisions that you make, you can lock yourself out of being able to do any kind of real experimentation down the line, at least effectively, right? Yes. So in this lean towards more action, it feels like they're being a little bit hampered by the kind of adherence to the stat and leveling up system, even though that is simplified from the previous games.
It's simplified almost to the degree that it doesn't need to be there.
Right.
Like you could almost just level up in this game because they've taken the number of stats down to 6. 2 of them, as far as I can tell, like entirely have to do with, magic, which hasn't revealed itself.
Yeah.
And then so really effectively you have 4 stats, like an endurance, a HP stat, and then dex or strength. And then they've removed the entire consideration of equip burden from the game. Like it's taken away so much that were like the RPG elements and the build making elements that it just kind of conflicts with a part of the Souls games I like while replacing it with something else I like, So it's kind of like, it's not a net loss, because I would say the combat in general is probably more fun in this game. Like when it's working, when you're doing it correctly, it's really satisfying and quick and like almost feels like a platinum game, like you're doing like kind of cool, like if there's a little combo meter on the side, like,
it's kind of funny because I'm playing Bayonetta at the same time because I got it on the Wii U. And like the timing and stuff, that corollary is not lost, like that correlation between the two. And so you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about that until just now.
Yeah,
but they're similar. They're so similar.
Yeah, it is. Like that's what it feels like to me. Like every once in a while I'm pulling off moves that make me feel cool in a way that I very rarely felt cool in Dark Souls. Like I could feel competent. Like in Dark Souls, like I'm just like, I know what I'm doing. Now I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, but every once in a while I feel really cool. The same thing goes for armor too, which is a bummer. Yeah. Like all armor is light armor, and like that has a big impact on fashion souls, but also it means that's an entire consideration to your character that just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I haven't found any armor that varies from any other armor by more than 10 stat points.
Right.
And they all look pretty samey too. Like they're subtly different, but there's such a unified aesthetic. Like you can't do anything that's like just, even color palette wise. Like it's like, what shade of gray do you want to wear? And then like I found a white set of armor that was a dirty, dingy white that really just looked like a very light shade of gray.
Yep. Oh yeah, the Assassin's armor, the Assassin's Creed armor.
Yeah.
So, have you found the is it a spoiler to say that there is a merchant where you can buy different sets of armor?
No, I found the merchant because you can buy different sets of armor in the hub. I found that. I've not found a different merchant.
Yeah, that's the one that I've used, and that added a little bit more variety. You're just not going to encounter a lot of this armor in the wild.
Yeah, there just aren't very many sets. It seems like.
Yeah.
So let's. I feel like we've been being negative. Let's talk about positive shit.
Holy shit! This game is beautiful.
Yeah, it's the prettiest game in the series. It's the best argument for a PS4 that I've seen. It's one of the best looking games I've played. Yeah, it is gorgeous, and it is gorgeous in a sense of graphical fidelity, and then also in a sense of design.
Right.
That shit is so on point as to be ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's on point in a way that isn't just, frivolous. They're not just saying, hey, we're going to have all of these, spires and minarets and, Victorian touches and things. Like, all of the aesthetics kind of go in and, build the world out and support the theme in a way that kind of, plays against that sense of being lost and bewilderment at the start. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like a singular, visual and thematic expression. And that kind of offsets, something that's a little bit of a bummer with the lack of variety in the early stage. What that sets up for later when they break out of kind of going around these Victorian cities is some of the most satisfying visuals I've seen in the series and possibly in games.
Yeah. But you have to go through they do hide it under I have this initial, this is beautiful. And then it just kind of kept going for a very long time. But that's, as you mentioned, that's intentional. And it sets up this sense of the real, in order to shatter it. And that's really, really cool. In every way, at the time, it was a smidge sick of it by the time, I started getting into other stuff. But not to the degree that it didn't feel, as satisfying or bombastic when I got there.
And all of the technical flourishes that they're able to do with particle effects and normal maps and just all the stuff that only really people who are paying attention to that stuff can see support the enemy design. Like when you're looking at these, especially the bosses, but even the rank and file, you're seeing these touches that I don't know would be possible at that level of fidelity before.
Yeah. It's just an amazing looking game. Level design is really good.
Yeah.
It is really excellent. I haven't run into a level yet that I felt was phoned in. Everything is pretty thoughtfully designed, and pretty harshly designed in a way that I really like. And even things everything works for one reason or another. So even things that on paper are just a run up, will be very visually interesting, or will have interesting enemy placement or an interesting mood. And if they are not that, if the thing looks kind of boring, it will be interesting to navigate. Specifically, I'm thinking about the sewers. Are kind of they're kind of boring looking, but there's interesting stuff as far as how you get around.
Yeah.
In them,
along with the level design thing, there are shortcuts in this game. Multiple ones that feel as satisfying as the shortcut in 5.2.
Yeah. Yeah. And plenty of them. If that was a thing that you had a problem with in Dark Souls 2, I think we were talking about it off mic in the green room, about how this is going to be kind of a weird season because a lot of people were, I don't want to cast emotions on anybody. But it seemed like some people, we were possibly a minority in being as into Dark Souls 2 as we were, even though we recognize its flaws. And we're going into Bloodborne, which is getting universal praise, and I do see some flaws with it. However, one of the things, I don't think it shares any flaws with Dark Souls 2.
Right.
There are a couple things it does that I don't like, but everything that Dark Souls 2 did less than optimally, I feel like this is knocking out of the park.
Yeah.
In a way that if you were one of those people, you may not agree with us, but if you're one of those people who felt very lukewarm on Dark Souls 2, this is a real must grab for you because it's addressing those things. The kind of the interconnectedness, of the world, which sometimes falls to the wayside, but at least the initial first quarter of the game, or the where you're going to spend a lot of your time, does connect and double back on itself in a way that feels very soulsy and feels like a real place, as well. Those things are going to and those made me smile too, because those are things I like too. Just because I didn't hate Dark Souls 2 for not doing them well doesn't mean I don't like them.
Right.
So I had a couple just real smile out loud moments. Doubling back on something or figuring out where two areas connected,
or even unexpected connections between areas, that sense of familiarity as you open a gigantic gate and walk through and think, wait a minute, what? I know this. That is there in full force, and it scratches an itch that really wasn't scratched that much last season. So it's nice. It's nice to see it come back. And I think you put it very great when you say, just because we liked things about Dark Souls 2 doesn't mean we don't really like stuff about Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, exactly. They do things super differently. And it's really going to come down to the kind of things you value. but again, like this, I'm way too early to kind of get to a final judgment,
Right.
in it. So like these are just like literally just setting down. And this is between, as I mentioned before, I'm not saying this to repeat myself, but between like rage breaks and stuff, which I haven't had to do, where like I can't trust my emotions because I'm too angry, which that doesn't happen to me very often. Like I didn't rage at Demon Souls. I didn't rage at Dark Souls 2. Only Dark Souls 1, which was the first one. So if that's literally the thing you miss is that rage feeling, which I know a lot of people do, this is for you too.
Yeah. This is going to make you feel again, I think.
Yeah. As far as that stuff goes,
I think I've been more temperate than you with it. I don't know that I've ever, rage quit. I think that I've been good about stopping myself before I get there. And that kind of comes along with, being able to take time off with it and, working from home most of the time and limiting myself to 8 hours a day. Like, I'm very conscious of, like, I don't want to grind my gears and end up at a place where I was, like, with Dark Souls 2 with Seldora.
Yeah. See, I didn't really run into that too much in Dark Souls 2. Like, I had a couple bosses that took me several tries, but nothing. And this isn't a judgment on that game. Necessarily, because I didn't run into that with Demon Souls. I love Demon Souls.
Yeah.
I just didn't run into it with those games. But here, the situation for me personally is different because I have more limited time than I would like. So when I spend 3 hours, just doing a boss run up and then going and grinding for healing stuff, which is something we'll talk about. And it just feels like a waste. Like I'm not learning anything from my failures. That's what's making me angry. Where I just didn't have that at all in the previous games. So is totally possibly like just a subjective Gary thing. Like this is just tailored to my weakness in some way that I can't, can't quite cop to or can't quite explain fully. Yeah. First impression stuff. What else we got?
I can't speak to the story at all or the narrative because
me either. I have a very vague idea, but that is it.
Which is fine.
Like, yeah, it is fine,
it's
but
great
it is
even. I like that.
Well, it's funny too though, because like comparatively, I feel like I'm further in the game to not have an idea than I'd previously been. Like I think the other Souls games, you get like they do kind of a bait and switch where it's like, here's the story that you think is happening, and then you find out the full story, and that's the moment. In Bloodborne, it feels like here's nothing. Like here's a couple lines. Ride on that for 20 hours and then we're going to introduce some more stuff. And like, I'm hesitant to say that because it could, somebody, and they could be right. And this is part of the reason why I'm speaking, with a real caveat here is that they're, you're just not paying attention or the clue pieces are there. You're not putting them together. That could be true, but I'm playing this the same way I've, play video games and it's not revealing itself to me.
Right.
Like it could be there. It seems like it is hidden to me. In a way that it hasn't been before. Yeah. And if it's not to you, that's great too. But it feels like that to me.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it's kind of a little bit of a Krusty's going to get here kind of moment. And I don't know if Krusty's going to get here or not.
I bet you he's going to get here.
Yeah.
Like I
so
trust it.
I trust it too. And that's why anytime I feel bewildered or questioning, I think, okay, this is actually building equity that's going to pay off when they open the floodgates. Or if not when they open the floodgates, when I go back through it with a fine-tooth comb and put things together.
Yeah. And it reveals what, and who even knows, like if that's going to become a mechanical thing too, because we'll talk about it again in the tutorial episode, but insight is such a weird thing. And I wonder how that plays in New Game Plus. Because doing those early areas with insight that you're not able to have in them might reveal new things too. Like, so it might literally be a different experience.
Yeah.
I don't, and even down to like, I don't really have like a log line on what I'm supposed to be doing at all. Like I'm going and, I'm seeking adversity. But the why of it is pretty lost on me.
Yeah.
I have some vague ideas about ending a thing and getting to a big thing to end the thing. But each individual boss that I fight in the interim, I don't know what their relation is to the thing, So that's where I'm at with that.
Other than I am a hunter and there is quarry, but
exactly, yeah, they're prey.
Yeah.
And that could be that it could end up being the point, but that's unusual for these games to just kind of have to be like, hey, these are bosses, go fight them to go do it,
or to even turn it into like, hey, think about it, why'd you kill all those things? Like if this turned out to be a Spec Ops thing, I don't know how I'd feel about that.
I'd feel bad. There's been a couple like maybe you're the real monster, like swerves
Yep.
going on in there. And I don't want them to do that. I don't think that suits this very well. If that ends up being the case, just because they didn't give me that first part to give me motivation. Like it's like the Spec Ops and BioShock and stuff. They're like, the game tells you to do this. It's the only thing you can do, and you do it. This game isn't even telling me to do anything. I'm just doing it because it's a video game, and like, it's a world to kill shit in that wants to kill me.
Yeah, progress super alles. Yeah.
Exactly. And because I'm going in with Souls knowledge and stuff. I will be interested when people start writing in to know if this is their first Souls game.
Yeah.
Because I would be really curious as to what that experience is like, because a lot of the stuff that we've talked about feels designed to be contrary or to counter previous iterations in the series. Like it builds on itself in a sense of contrast as opposed to evolution. So yeah, if you're listening to this, if this is your first Souls game, like let us know, and tell us if you had a similar experience. Yeah. I'm worried that people are going to think that we're too down on this. I'm not at all. Like I love it, and all I want to do is go play it right now. It's like literally the only thing. I have to go do some chores and stuff. I don't want to, and like I said, it's the first time I've ever had a job that I liked, and it came in. It's a real monkey's paw situation because it came during Bloodborne week.
Yeah.
So all I want to do is play more of it. I'm so interested in it, and the moment-to-moment stuff is engaging and surprising in a way that like is really well and truly special. The only things that are like still kind of stuck in my craw are mechanical things that I may come to peace with. Yeah. And time will tell.
For sure. And, the thing you said earlier about you're just kind of like in between rage breaks. You're not going to be charitable towards something that is making you feel that way.
Exactly.
The moment, right? Like you don't when you're lifting or whatever, like the burn is there, but that is to benefit you later. Right.
Yeah.
So,
I'm even feeling pretty charitable. Like it's like I'm not hating it. Like I'm actually still loving it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, some of the little mechanical things that are making me angry specifically. On the whole, I haven't lost track of the game itself.
Yeah. So it is a fantastic experience. That aesthetic and story stuff, I think is there and is more singular. In a lot of ways, in a way that satisfies me. And kind of a note that I want to leave this on is that I want people to understand is this is a horror game.
Oh yeah.
And that thematic shift, that there have been elements of horror in previous Dark Souls stuff, Tower of Latria, just any number of stuff. It's like it's about zombies, right? But this kind of leans into a specific flavor of Victorian horror that overrides my hatred of steampunk.
Here's the thing: is it's a cosmic horror story. Like it is a weird fiction Lovecraft story, through and through. Like it is, all of those thematic elements are there. And two, it's not steampunk at all, which is great. Like it is literally just like steam fashion, but I haven't seen like an automaton horse or anything.
Yeah. I suppose so. And that speaks more.
I wasn't saying that to correct you. I was saying like I also had that surprise. Like I was like, oh, this is going to be some kind of steampunk bullshit, but it's not. It's the Cthulhu by Gaslight, the RPG setting.
Yeah. When you're looking at when you're making your character, you have an option to add glasses, and so I gave my guy little glasses because I wanted him to look like me. But they also have monocles or shitty steampunk glasses with doors glued to them. I was like, oh god, what does this portend? And really, all that says is what steampunk has done to any kind of Victorian setting.
Yeah.
so yeah, that is there. Don't be dissuaded. If you are similarly averse.
No, not at all. And if you want to like. I am so happy that they did move away from a kind of a medieval
D&D
setting. Yeah, the D&D setting. Like I'm very happy about that. Like there are a lot of role-playing games to cop, and way to cop, one of my all-time favorites, if not my favorite, for this. So that makes me very excited. So you're totally right. It is a horror game. It is genuinely unnerving at a lot of points. It does it does with Darkness what we wanted Dark Souls 2 to do with Darkness.
Yeah.
I'm getting out that torch with regularity.
I was so happy when I found an item that turns into like the light gem from Demon Souls.
I haven't bought that yet. I found it, but I like you can buy it, but I haven't done it yet.
It's useful.
Yeah, I've just been into having the torch out.
Me too, because you can light enemies on fire. It's great.
Yeah, and it's real pretty.
Yeah.
And I don't use my gun all that often, which is probably a mistake on my part. I still use it, but don't use it all that often. I'm like a U.S. Ranger.
Something about the story there. It's really weird to me that this has cutscenes with dialogue.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, and enemies talk.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're right. It's like Resident Evil 4. Like, you did this, or just screaming obscenities at you. Like, it's great.
It is actually Resident Evil 4. It's a lot like Resident Evil 4 in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that throughout the season. But it is so cool to see the Souls, like Miyazaki do something and kind of cross his aesthetic with a different game.
Mm-hmm.
Like the strongest parallel to this, like it is like I was almost about to say a very bold statement, which I won't say, but like I was going to say this, it has as much in common with RE4 as it does Souls, and it does not quite.
Right.
But it seems like the biggest corollary or the biggest touchstone other than Souls.
Yeah.
Like even though that percentage might only be like 15% or 20%, like it's so RE4 in a way that makes me kind of wish that won the survival horror thing so I could replay it with a Bloodborne in mind.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I mean, there's nothing stopping us later.
Yeah, that's true. I just don't want to I don't know if you've run into this thing to watch out fireballs, but every once in a while I'm like, I want to replay a game, but what if we do it for the show? Fuck it, I won't do it. I don't want to end up having to play this twice in a year.
Yeah, I've done that as well. Yeah, but like those unexpected combinations are where kind of like creative insight comes from. So the fact that they're kind of willing to cross A with B and determine what's there not only is brave and bold and gets them out of their comfort zone, where they've been a lot of the time since King's Field, with stuff like Shadow Tower and Echo Knight aside. I'm talking about From as a studio, not Miyazaki himself. It actually does kind of hit on something that at least the two of us really, really hold dear, right?
Yeah,
an aesthetic and a set of themes and stuff.
Yeah, if you like hearing us like stuff, this is going to be a fun season for you, because I have joy laughed at enemy designs in this game with amazing regularity.
Yeah.
Once you start running into stuff that isn't just dudes, it is uniformly a delight.
Yeah.
Like just really creatively designed from a combat perspective, and then also from just like oh my god, this thing looks weird. Like, and that is so fun, and like I love it. It's doing the same thing that Souls have always done, where it's like things aren't afraid to look fucking stupid.
Yep.
But as opposed to it being like before, it was like the entry in the monster manual that like was kind of embarrassing. This is like it's that offness when it was seasoning before is now the main course.
Yeah.
And there's more intentionality to it. Like when you run into those weird manta ray things in the forest, in Dark Souls 1, like those are weird. Like it's just this weird little touch that like makes everything a little bit off. Here, the things that make everything off are like, this is the point. Like this, this is intentional, and there's a reason for this, as opposed to just like a little like touch.
Yeah. And
it's used to great effect.
Yeah.
Like I literally, like there's an enemy where I literally like was like, like it got me, it surprised me, and I'm just like, oh whoa. And if you here's a preview of what this entire season is gonna be like. Cole's gonna be like, and then you run into these, and it's gonna be a clever like name or alternate name for whatever this thing is. I'm gonna be like, oh my god, those things are awesome. And then it's gonna be a couple seconds of that while the guest just sits there and nods to their microphone.
Yep.
is sick of these two idiots.
Yeah. So any guests who are listening, just know that.
Look forward to that, buds.
Yeah. By listening to this and agreeing to be on the show, that is a contract to not be upset when we do that.
Yeah. So I think that we're this is probably good for first impressions.
Yes.
So again, if you're salty at all about us not immediately launching in the season, I will take the heat on that. Even though I think we're both on the same page, but like, I don't want to misexplain Insight.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. I'm not confident I'll understand it in a week. Because even once I've beat the game and started going online, like this stuff is trickling out really slowly, as far as mechanical knowledge of this game. And I want to be able to make a good, not just like here are the 5 tips that any first Bloodborne player needs to learn. Be aggressive. Like I want to be able to say like, hey, this is how this works.
Right.
kind of right off the bat.
Yep, and I agree with you on that. And I feel in a similar. I feel like I'm in a similar place where I don't feel equipped to explain what's happening, at least not without having had a chance to beat the game and then absorb kind of the chatter that people are.
Yeah, there's chalice dungeons, dog. Yeah, like I don't like I've done one of those in completion, and I have no idea what the end result is. That, and I got coffee before work yesterday, and the guy noticed me wearing my Dark Souls shirt, and we started talking about it, and he told me something I had no idea about chalice dungeons. I'm like, this is just out in the world. Like I don't know. Like I'm just like, there's so little I know about this, which is a great feeling. It just makes it hard to
to do this show,
plan a show about. And that's something we're going to talk about too in the generalities, but like the distinctions between areas, that's going to make this tricky too. I think we're going to be able to do it, but man, like if you're like in the previous, when we decided to do the Dark Souls season, where it's like, this is a guide, like a travel guide to Lordran, and we can kind of go area by area. That's going to be tougher here.
Yeah. Just because there's more crossover between intermediate areas and stuff. Intermediate areas that are areas of their own.
Yes. Yeah. And there are areas that, don't have, we're probably going to roughly use bosses. It might be a little bit more like Demon Souls in that respect. So next week, we are going to put something out. I'll let you know what we're going to try to do. So somebody has translated the DesignWorks interview on Dark Souls 2. Which has shed a lot of light on things. So again, this is don't feel salty about it. This is in lieu of nothing.
Yep.
So I know you're probably sick of hearing us talk about Dark Souls 2, but I think we'd be remiss not to address it because it is really interesting. The gentleman who's translating it has it, I think, 2/3 translated, if I had to guess. So we're hoping that third part comes out in time to record. Kind of flying by the seat of our pants.
It's a little bit of a gamble, which we don't like to do.
Yes.
We like predictability, but
God, do we like predictability?
Yeah, oh boy, modus operandi, my friend.
Yeah,
but yeah, that is what we're aiming for, and we hope to be able to deliver that.
Additionally, what I'm going to try to do is hunt down a digital copy of the comic, the Dark Souls 2 comic that came out. That is insanely difficult to buy. Like I've seen copies on eBay; they're very expensive. It's something I feel like I should own. And I'm sure it's real fluff, but it might be worth talking about. And just in the interest of absolute completeness, everything we've had to do to kind of like push off for Bloodborne between these seasons. But also like as a Dark Souls podcast, and there's a comic based on Dark Souls, we should cover it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to get a hold of a digital copy of that. We're going to try to do the interview. If those things don't fall into place, I don't know. We might end up just doing like a shoot the shit kind of thing. Or maybe like, check this out. What if if people have questions?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Cole?
Oh yeah, like a Q&A thing. Yeah, that's
if you have questions for us, like we'll pad out this shit. Like we're gonna turn into Twin Humanities for a week. And I don't mean that like they pad stuff out. I mean they're a more free form, conversational kind of podcast. They like, and I like those guys and I like that show a lot. Look for them this season. But it's gonna be a little bit more like us just kind of talking probably.
Yeah.
If none of these special subjects come into play. So if you have any questions for us or anything like that, hit us up.
Yeah, that is at Duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yep. And if we do end up just doing the DesignWorks thing next week, your questions will be answered in future installments, or it'll just be a little bit longer of an episode.
Yeah.
Either way, we're committed to having an episode every week. We don't want to do just like a break. That feels lame. But we do need a little bit of extra blood time.
Yep. And I think it'll benefit us all. So.
Yeah, I think so too. To tide you over, though, I got the okay to announce something. So when so after our little interstitial thing we're doing next week, and our 2 episodes on the tutorial area and generalities, we're going to be covering Central Yarnum with our guest Vadi Vidya.
Holy shit!
Yeah. So the man himself, the person who we have. And I'm not saying this to blow smoke because I've met him and he's a great dude. And also, like, I try not to do that, but like, we owe a lot to in this podcast. So for my money, he's the best Souls lorester. I like I like a lot of other people. I like EMB. I love Dave Klein. I want to get Dave back on the show as well. Yeah. But Vadi has been the guy who I've wanted to get since day one.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to have him. And I'm very excited to have him on our kickoff guest episode in kind of the, because the spoiler for Central Yarnum, like Dark Souls does first levels better than any series in the world, as far as like, thoughtfully designed kind of appropriately difficult and introducing you to the gameplay theses of the game. I think literally as well as any series other than maybe Super Mario Brothers. And having Vadia on that episode is just very exciting.
Yeah, he's also, I think, our most requested guest on the show. So
yes,
there is demand for this out there, and I'm very happy that we're going to be able to finally achieve that. And so I'm incredibly grateful to you, Gary, for doing the work to talk to him and get him to do this.
I pressed flesh. I was like a politician. Like I had to go. Like I felt like it was what is that movie where it's Sean Connery and he's like courting the businessmen.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or like Rising Sun or something like that. Yeah. I feel like that. Like it was like, okay, I want to go meet you in person and you can see that we're not creeps. I know he didn't think we were creeps. Yeah. I don't want to again. But yeah, I'm really excited about it because it has been a goal of mine for the entire runtime of the show to have him on. And yeah, so look forward to that.
For sure, yeah, and I think that's about it in terms of announcements. There may or may not be a pre-roll about this, but the shirts are still up and available. So the Trap Snakes and the Turtles Pillars. Trap Snakes is winning, and that is not a surprise. But we need some more orders on Turtles Pillars in order for that to print. So everybody who's looking at that, go to Duckfeed.tv/shirts. Check out those designs. I'm very proud of them, and people have responded very positively so far. And I thank anybody who's already pre-ordered one.
Yeah, if you are a Turtles man, if you're a member of the Turtle Club, fuck yeah, I'm a member of the Turtle Club. Then you got to show your support. Yeah, because otherwise you're not going to get a Turtle Club shirt. Yeah, got to get on that, buds. Yeah. But if you're a Snake man, you're all set. Yeah,
you're good. So, made in the shades.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And then as far as normal stuff, when we begin a new season, telling your friends, word of mouth, rating your reviews, all that stuff's super important. Yep. We tend to, the listener curve for the show is really interesting because when people aren't playing the game, they don't listen to the show. A lot of people are playing Bloodborne right now. So this is a really good opportunity to get people in on the show. Yep. And this is the time when everyone's it's fresh and everything. So we'd appreciate ratings, reviews, and telling people about it.
Yeah, help us ride the hype train. And also we'd like to drive people to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/bonfiresidechat. We've had a little bit of a lid on Bloodborne spoilers, but as we proceed through the game and more people get up to speed, that discussion is kind of fleshing out and it's becoming a little bit less hushed. And we want to welcome you into the discussion, especially if you are a new listener as of today. It is a fantastic group of people, and we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then finally, if you go to patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv, if you want to financially support our podcast, that is how we are able to do this. Yes. Specifically this Bloodborne season. Because as fine a machine as the PS4 ended up being, neither of us were intending on getting one. And it being an exclusive kind of threw, a handful of sand in the gears. Yeah. And we're very grateful to people financially supporting us and allowing us to do this.
For sure.
So if you want to join those wonderful people, you can. And if not, if you're just listening, that's also great. Yeah. So we really appreciate that.
Either way, you're helping us out.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. I think that's probably about it. So what should they do until next time, Cole?
They should beware the old blood.
Beware the old blood. I was thinking that there's also the what is it?
It's fear the old blood. Oh.
Fear the old blood. There's and the good, something like seek the good blood and something will follow. There's a couple different taglines for the season. Yeah. We'll find one.
I've got a notebook full of great quotes that I've read. So not full, a page in a notebook.
Yeah. Yeah. Or is it just quotes in general? Like to be or not to be. This is gold.
It's a notebook by
Fear
which
not
I mean
what you can do for.
It's Poor Richard's Almanac.
Yeah, exactly. Fear not what you can do for man. That's a good version of that quote.
That's pretty good. That's
that's great.
It's the perfect circle version of that quote.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm known for many things, and one of them is loving a perfect circle. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll come up with an appropriate sign off. I was thinking what Alfred says at the end of when you talk to him. Yeah, was my guess. I was really hoping when I said that you'd be like, Alfred. Because we had a fun text where it really felt like we were playing two different games, which is an awesome thing. Yep. Where we were just both referring to areas the other person hadn't been in. Yep. Which is very cool for being as far into the game as we were. So it's gonna be a super exciting year for the show, and thanks everybody for joining us, and have a good night.
Bye everybody.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon